The engine idled under the weight of early morning fog, the only sound on County Road 7 besides the slow rhythm of Boone's growl. Deputy Micah Hale leaned forward, confused. His K-9 partner stood rigid in the middle of the lane, teeth bared, body blocking the narrow asphalt like a living barricade. He wasn't barking, just staring straight at the dust-caked sedan crawling up the ridge. The driver never looked up. Boone didn't budge. And when Micah opened the trunk 20 minutes later, the fog didn't feel cold anymore. The air was thick with wet pine and silence. County Road 7 twisted along the edge of the hills like an old scar, cracked asphalt, no shoulder, no traffic, just woods that always seemed to whisper. Deputy Micah Hale had driven it 100 times in the dark, and still it felt like somewhere a body could vanish and never be found. His cruiser's headlights sliced through the low mist, but visibility was garbage. Boone, his K-9 partner, sat alert in the passenger seat, ears pricked, muscles coiled like wire. Micah reached for his coffee, but stopped as Boone gave a low growl. Not his playful grumble, not his, "I hear something," alert. This was the deep, rolling growl that said something's wrong. Micah scanned the road. "What is it, boy?" Then Boone leapt across the console and slammed his paws against the driver's window. A beat later, he shoved the door handle with his nose, a trick Micah had never taught him. Micah slammed the brakes. Boone jumped out and ran forward, planting himself square in the middle of the road. Hackles up, the cruiser's headlights lit him up like a statue, fur gleaming, breath puffing white in the morning cold. "What the hell?" Micah stepped out, hand resting on his holster. He followed Boone's line of sight and saw headlights flicker between the trees. A car, small sedan beat to hell, crawling along the curve like it was afraid to arrive. Micah held up a hand and stepped forward. Boone didn't move an inch. Vehicle approaching northbound. He muttered into the radio. No plates visible. Slowing to intercept. The car didn't stop until it was almost on Boone. Then it screeched. The tires groaned and the front end dipped hard, narrowly missing the K-9 by inches. Micah's stomach dropped. "Hey!" Boone didn't flinch, just growled deeper. The sedan shuddered to a stop, half in the ditch. Engine ticking. Front bumper cracked. Micah drew his flashlight and approached the driver's window, tapping once. It rolled down halfway. The driver was a young woman, early 30s maybe. Pale, dark circles under her eyes, hair in a loose bun that looked 2 days old. Her knuckles were white on the wheel. "You okay, ma'am?" No response. Micah leaned in slightly. "You almost hit my partner." Still nothing. Just a slow blink. Her jaw twitched. Eyes glassy, staring through him like he wasn't there. Micah felt Boone pressed against his leg, vibrating with tension. He tried again. "License and registration?" Her hand moved, but not to the glove box. It reached up and turned off the engine. Then she opened the door. Micah stepped back, instinct kicking in. "Ma'am, stay in the vehicle." But she got out slowly, stiff, like her joints hurt. She wore a hoodie several sizes too big and jeans soaked at the hem. No shoes. Barefoot. Boone growled again. "Everything all right with you this morning?" She turned her head slightly. "I think I'm lost." Micah studied her face. There was something off about her tone, flat, rehearsed, like she was saying it for the 100th time. He flicked his light toward the back of the car. No rear plates. Duct tape holding part of the taillight in. "Were you headed?" She blinked again. I don't remember." Micah looked at Boone. The shepherd was now circling the vehicle, nose low to the seams of the trunk. He sat down behind it, staring. He never did that unless. Micah walked to the rear. Boone pawed the bumper once. Popped the trunk. Micah said, glancing over his shoulder. The woman didn't move. "I need to see what's in your trunk." A pause. Then she spoke softly but clearly. "I wouldn't do that." Micah felt the hair on his arms rise. "Open the trunk. Now!" Another beat. Then she reached into her pocket, pulled out the key fob, and pressed it. Click. The latch released with mechanical cough. Micah moved forward, hand on his weapon. Boone pressed close behind him. He lifted the trunk lid. For a moment, all he saw was a blanket. Gray, folded, stained at the edges. Then he noticed the shape beneath it. And the smell hit. Not rot. Not blood. Bleach. Micah's pulse kicked hard. He yanked the blanket aside and froze. It was a boy, maybe 10, pale, barefoot like the woman. His wrists were bound with a strip of fabric, torn from the same hoodie she wore. His mouth was taped, but his eyes were wide open, locked on Boone. Alive. Barely. Micah's voice cracked the silence like thunder. Dispatch, code red. I've got a live miner, bound and concealed in a vehicle trunk. I need EMS and backup on County Road 7, north of the Pine Bend turnoff. The woman didn't run. She didn't cry. She just slowly sank to her knees, hands behind her head. Boone licked the boy's cheek, gently, and let out a low whine. Micah ripped the tape from the kid's mouth and unwrapped the cloth binding his hands. You're safe now. You hear me? The boy didn't speak. He just clutched Boone's fur like it was the only real thing left in the world. Later, back at the station, Sheriff Lena Draper stood in her office, arms crossed, jaw tight. She was in her 50s, hardwired with small-town steel and big-city instincts. Her badge was old school, but her eyes saw everything. Micah stood across from her, arms stiff at his sides. Boone lay beside him, eyes watching the hallway. So, Lena said finally, she hasn't spoken a word, lawyered up before the medics even finished checking her vitals. Not even a name? Nope. Lena glanced down at the intake form. We're calling her Jane Doe for now. Micah's jaw flexed. She knew what was in that trunk. She said not to open it. She's not cracked once? Nope. Not a tear. They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Lena said, You think she's a mother? I don't know, Micah said. The boy hasn't said a thing either. Shocked, probably. But the way he grabbed Boone. Like he trusted him. Like he'd seen him before. That made Lena tilt her head. You say you think they knew each other? Micah didn't answer right away. Then he looked up. I'm saying that boy wasn't kidnapped today. At the county medical center, the child, registered as John Doe, lay under warm lights, for in one arm, stuffed bear tucked awkwardly under the other. He hadn't spoken, hadn't cried, hadn't moved much beyond clinging to Boone when they let the K-9 near him. But now, alone in the room, he stirred. Boone sat by the bed, eyes alert, tail barely wagging. The boy turned his head slightly, whispered something. The nurse outside didn't hear it, but Boone did. He sat up straighter. The boy whispered again, this time a little louder. Don't let them take me back. Sheriff Lena Draper stared at the wall map of Pine County, eyes fixed on a pinned photo of a sedan. The boy had been admitted under John Doe, and the woman was sitting silent and holding. No ID, no prints, no answers. Lena turned as Micah entered, shaking off rain. Boone patted him behind him. For damp, eyes scanning like always. She say anything? Lena asked. Micah shook his head. Just sat there, arms crossed, staring at the floor. You get a read on her? She's hiding something big, he said. Not just guilt. Fear. The kind of fear that doesn't come from getting caught, but from what comes next. Lena crossed her arms. That boy is not talking either? No, Micah replied. But when Boone went in the room, he whispered something. Lena straightened. What did he say? Micah hesitated. Don't let them take me back. Lena's mouth tightened. Back where? Micah shook his head. That's what we need to find out. Holding cell, 11:17 a.m. Micah pulled up a chair across from the woman. The only sound was a hum of fluorescent lights. She didn't lift her head. He slid a paper cup toward her. Water. No response. He leaned forward. You know he's alive, right? The boy. A flicker crossed her face. Jaw twitch. Eyes blinking once too slowly. Micah tapped the table. You kept him breathing. That counts for something. But we need to know who he is. Where he came from. She exhaled through her nose. You don't understand. Then help me. Her voice cracked. If I say anything, they'll kill us both. Micah's pulse ticked. He leaned closer. Who? She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time, and whispered, the Hollow Pines Church. Sheriff's office, back room, Lena flipped through a worn file folder, dust falling from the edges. Hollow Pines, she said, eyes narrowing. Haven't heard that name in years. What is it? Micah asked. Off the grid compound. Started as a spiritual retreat back in the 90s. Built out on the old Miller land, way past Cold Ridge Hollow. Wasn't much, just some cabins, a chapel, livestock, but they kept to themselves. Then the founder disappeared in '03, left a few dozen followers and one hell of a reputation. For what? Child marriages, isolation, wards of the state who fell off the radar. Micah rubbed his jaw. You're saying the boy might have come from there? I'm saying if what she said is true, Lena replied. We've got a lot more than a kidnapping. Medical center, pediatric ward. Boone rested beside the boy's hospital bed, tail tapping slowly. The child stirred, hand still curled in the shepherd's fur. Micah entered quietly, crouched down. You remember anything? He asked gently. The boy stared at him. Blue eyes. Quiet. Alert. Then he reached toward the table. A crayon sat there, left by a nurse earlier. He took it and began to draw. Micah waited. The boy sketched in harsh. Jagged lines. Tall trees, a cabin, a wire fence. Inside the fence, figures. Small, holding hands. Micah pointed. Is that you? The boy nodded once. Micah looked closer. At the far edge of the drawing was a dark, scribbled shape, like a hole in the forest. No windows. One door. A cross painted above it. Micah tapped the building. The boy whispered. They call it the Room of Silence. County Records Archive. That evening, the storm outside clattered against the old windows as Lena and Micah combed through paper files. Boone paced restlessly. Here. Lena slid a faded inspection report toward Micah. Hollow Pines Compound. Inspected March 1997. Buildings, 9. Known residents, 42. She pulled another. Child Services visit. June 2002. No contact. Entry denied. Agents reported gun presence. Referral closed due to lack of cooperation and jurisdictional dispute. Micah cursed under his breath. They shut the file. Yep. Looks like the whole place vanished after 2003. No new taxes, no calls, number 911 pings. Nothing. Until today. Boone suddenly let out a low growl and moved toward the door. Micah froze. What is it? Footsteps. Lena reached for her holster. A knock. Then the door creaked open. A man stepped inside. Tall, gray beard, long coat damp with rain. He looked like someone carved from the trees themselves. I believe you found something that belongs to us, he said calmly. Interrogation room, 9:03 p.m. They ran the man's ID, nothing flagged. Said his name was Elijah Rowe. Claimed he was the legal guardian of the boy. Brought forged custody papers, notarized with a Hollow Pines church seal. Lena folded her arms. Where exactly do you live, Mr. Rowe? Cold Ridge Hollow, he said with a smile. We tend the land there. Heal the broken. Micah's hands tightened into fists. The boy was bound, in a trunk, gagged. That doesn't look like healing to me. Elijah didn't blink. He was running from his blessings. The Lord disciplines those he loves. Lena's voice hardened. He's not going back with you. Elijah's smile vanished. Then I suggest you keep the doors locked tonight. Sheriff's office, later that night. The power flickered once. Twice. Then the lights died. Micah grabbed his flashlight, sweeping the room. Generator's dead, Lena said from behind. Cut line. Boone was already growling, low and steady. Outside. 4 men, maybe 5. Flashlights on the ridge. I think they're here for the boy. Micah's stomach turned cold. We need to move him. He's already en route to the county shelter with 2 troopers. Left 20 minutes ago. Micah blinked. You didn't tell me. I didn't want you trying to go with him. He stared at her. You don't trust me? Lena didn't answer. That silence was all it took. Road to Cold Ridge, same time. The squad car drove slowed down Route 12, rain sheeting across the windshield. In the back seat, the boy watched the trees blur past. He clutched Boone's badge. Then the cruiser shuddered. The tires went flat, both back ones at once. The driver cursed. We're compromised, tires blown out. The trooper beside him reached for the radio. Dispatch, we're under. Glass shattered. The car spun. Dark figures swarmed from the trees. Sheriff's office, moments later. Micah's radio crackled. Static. Then, officer down, repeat. Child is... Then silence. Micah bolted for the door. I'm going after them. Lena grabbed his arm. You don't even know where they went. I know who took him. Her grip tightened. You run out that door and you go rogue. I can't back you after that. Micah looked at her, hurt cutting deeper than anger. You already don't, he said. Then he left. Boone followed. Cold Ridge Hollow, just before dawn. They moved fast through the woods, soaked to the bone. Boone led the way, nose close to the ground, barking once. A signal, a scent. Micah followed, flashlight low. Then they saw it, a faint glow through the trees. Lanterns, smoke, the edge of the compound. Boone stopped. Micah crouched, beyond the trees. He saw them, figures in white robes, gathered around a building. A boy's cries echoed in the dark, thin and terrified. Micah's hands shook as he raised the binoculars. The building at the center, no windows, one door, a red cross painted above it. The room of silence. Boone growled. Micah whispered, Not today. Fog clung to the tree trunks like smoke as dawn bled into Cold Ridge Hollow. Deputy Micah Hale crouched just beyond the last line of pines, rifle slung over his back, his K-9 Boone low and alert beside him. Below, the hollow pines compound pulsed with eerie calm. Hooded figures moving like ghosts between cabins, their white robes dirt-streaked, faces obscured. But all Micah saw was a room. The squat, windowless building sat at the heart of the clearing, its red cross flaked and bleeding. The door cracked just enough to let sound leak out. A child's muffled scream cut through the quiet like a knife. Micah's breath hitched. Boone tensed. He looked through the scope again. That's when he saw her. The Jane Doe from the station, barefoot, robes gone, her hoodie zipped high and stained. She was standing near the door, watching, waiting. She saw him, and shook her head once, slow and deliberate. No, 15 minutes earlier. Sheriff Lena Draper stood alone in the evidence room, fingers trembling as she unlocked the top cabinet. She pulled down a weathered box, unmarked, sealed since 2005. Inside, Polaroids, crayon drawings, case notes, missing miners, Cold Ridge area. Names she hadn't seen in 20 years stared back at her in faded ink. Micah had been right. It hadn't started this week. It had never stopped. She closed the box, jaw set. Then she grabbed her shotgun. Back at the compound. Micah moved fast, circling low, cutting between the cabins like a shadow. Boone moved with surgical precision, pausing at each corner, nose high, eyes sharp. They reached the rear of the room of silence. Cinderblock walls. One vent. No cameras. Micah pulled bolt cutters from his pack and snapped the rusted grate off the vent cover. He crouched. Too narrow for him, but not for Boone. He pointed to the hole. Find him. Boone stared at him for half a second, just long enough for Micah to feel the fear crawl up his spine. Then the shepherd vanished into the dark. Micah rose and moved toward the front door, heart pounding. 2 guards stood outside, rifles slung but casual. One smoked. The other prayed, quietly under his breath. Micah crept to the side of the building, pulled the pin from a flashbang, and tossed it into the bushes opposite the door. Boom! The guard snapped around. Micah stepped out and dropped them both, non-lethal shots to the legs. They screamed. He kicked one rifle aside, grabbed the other. Then the door creaked open, and Boone stood there, blood on his muzzle. A small, pale hand clutched his scruff. The boy escaped. Micah grabbed the child, pulled him tight, and ran, Boone flanking. Shouts erupted behind them. Sirens wailed in the distance. Boone barked once, signaling pursuit. Micah didn't care. He just ran. Into the woods, down the slope, across the old cattle trail, that hadn't seen a hoof in years. The boy clung to him, breathing ragged, heart hammering. A shot cracked behind them. Micah felt bark explode over his shoulder. He dropped to the ground, shielding the boy, returning fire. Then headlights broke through the trees. A cruiser tore into view. Sheriff Lena behind the wheel. Micah leapt up, boy in arms. Boone bounded beside them. Lena threw the door open. "Get in." They did. She spun the wheel and gunned it. Behind them, the Hollow Pines compound lit up in chaos. Fires, voices, gunshots fading into the hills. County jail 2 days later. The woman finally spoke. Her name was Maren Sloan, former member of the Hollow Pines community. Taken there as a teenager, forced into spiritual bonding with one of the elders, pregnant by 16. Baby taken from her before his first birthday, assigned to another family inside the compound. She hadn't seen him since. Not until 2 weeks ago, when she found him locked in a room of silence. They punished the children who asked questions, she said, eyes rimmed with sleep. Said their souls would get stuck between this life and the next. The room kept them quiet. For days. Micah sat across from her, fists clenched. Why now? Why take him and run? Maren stared at the table. Because he called me Mom. The twist. Back in the evidence room, Lena examined a decades-old intake report from Hollow Pines. A child listed as no-name number 6 had been processed by the county for suspected abuse in 2003. Then the file was sealed, signed off by a caseworker named Gretchen Rowe. Micah read over her shoulder. Rowe. Lena nodded. Elijah's wife. Wait, that means... Lena pulled out another photo, one of Elijah from 2004, cradling a toddler. Same eyes, same shape. Micah stared at the boy in the photo. That's the same kid from the trunk. Yeah, Lena said. And according to this, he's Micah Rowe. Micah froze. No, he's not. Lena looked at him gently. He's your brother, Micah. Silence. Long shattering. Micah's voice cracked. But my family... They never told you, Lena said softly. They placed you in foster care when the compound fell apart. You got adopted. He didn't. Boone leaned against Micah's leg, grounding him, and Micah whispered, Then I'm not letting him go again. 1 week later, quiet resolution. The boy, Micah Rowe Jr., as the hospital paperwork now read, sat in a sun-drenched patch of grass behind the station. Boone rested his head in the boy's lap. Micah knelt in front of him, hands trembling. I know it's going to take time, he said, but I'm not going anywhere. You're safe now. The boy didn't speak, but after a long pause, he took Micah's hand, held it, and smiled. Lena stood at the edge of the lot, watching them. Maren stood beside her, pale and quiet. He remembers things now, Maren said, not just pain. He remembered a song I used to hum when he was a baby. Lena nodded. He's going to be okay. Maren's voice broke. What about the others? Lena's jaw tightened. We'll find them. She glanced at Micah. Some dogs don't stop barking until the truth's out of the ground. Final image. Boone lifts his head toward the tree line. Eyes sharp, like he knows there's more buried in the hills. And he's ready to dig.